Hello and welcome to the HealthBridge podcast. I'm your host, Holly B. Today I'm speaking with Dawn of Dawn's Dirt. She is a Canadian farmer, or I should say, has been a farmer for most of her life until just recently when she had to give up her farm. And she produced vegetables, brought them to farmers markets 6 to 7 days a week, had a pretty strong operation going up there until she had to recently let go of her farm. Now she is an online coach who teaches people how to grow their own food in whatever available space they have at their homes. Dawn is such a great personality. She is a very strong woman. She does not hold back. She tells you like it is, and that's what I love about her so much. And one of the reasons why I wanted to have her on to talk about food, to talk about agriculture, to talk about sustainability, and how all of this can help your health on multiple different levels, as well as the health of your own community and supporting local agriculture and local farms. We talk about the red tape and the bureaucracy and all the things that go along with agriculture and what you need to know and probably don't know about what goes on behind the scenes. And then we also talk about Dawn's personal experience with her father having lupus and how she saw him respond in his diagnosis and beyond, and what she learned from her experience there. So we have a really great conversation. Dawn never disappoints. She is just full of inspiration, knowledge, information, and lots of truth telling. So let's dive in now to this episode with Dawn. Dawn of Dawn's Dirt. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. We've been chatting about it for a while now, and you're finally here. So I'm glad to have you on the podcast, and I can't wait to have a really fun discussion with you. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here with you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So Dawn, you are in the same business coaching program that I am in, which is how we got connected. And you have a very interesting coaching platform that you're putting together, but which it revolves around helping people grow their own food and be sustainable in their food production and making sure that they always have access to food. And we're going to get into that. But you connected with me on another level because your father had lupus. And so I'd love to actually start there and just see what your experience was like as a daughter of somebody with lupus.
Absolutely. So yeah, my dad, he's passed on now, but my dad was diagnosed with lupus when he was, I think, 34, something like that. And the doctor that diagnosed him was not kind and just looked at him and said, "Well, Ted, you have lupus and most people die within 10 years." And my dad got mad actually, and he stood up. And my dad's a feisty man, or was a feisty man. I'm a little bit of a feisty woman too. And he stood up and he poked the doctor in the shoulder actually and said, "There's only one person going to tell me when I'm going to die, and that's not you." And he walked out of the office. And my dad, like, he did his treatments and he ended up in the hospital with lupus attacks on the odd occasion. And he would come in and out of it. Stress really affected him. I know he was in a stressful partnership for a while and he ended up in the hospital for months because that was stress. I don't know a lot about the ins and outs of lupus. Obviously, you know way more about it, but it affected his kidneys and his kidneys. And so he would manage it in and out of the hospital, but he never let it get to him. Like, he left that doctor's office that day, and yes, he did his treatments and he did whatever the doctor said to do, but he just carried on with life. And so he started businesses, he ran his greenhouse, he worked, you couldn't slow him down. He didn't let the diagnosis get him down. And it's a real mental thing. He just acted as if he didn't have lupus and went on. And so on the 10-year anniversary, actually, he phoned that doctor up and he said, "Well, it's 10 years and I'm not dead. And actually, I'm in remission right now. You're wrong." And just carried on. He made it another 10 years after that. And he passed away of a heart attack. His heart grew too large, and which was ironic because he was a very giving, caring, kind man. And so it's ironic that he passed away of an enlarged heart, not necessarily from a lupus attack on his kidneys. So it could have been a byproduct of the lupus, but yeah, who knows? Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
interesting that you say he died of a enlarged heart. I've known people that have died from that as well, and all of them were extremely caring and giving individuals. So
Oh,
I think that seems to be a commonality that I've seen when I hear that. What I find interesting about your story and or your dad's story, I should say, that I want to point out is that he didn't, he respected the doctor, but he did not take the doctor's word for it. And he still made the decision to live his own life. And I think when someone gets diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, it is scary. It's scary, and it's really easy to fall into fear mode, maybe fall into victim mode, and to really embody that diagnosis and wear it like a cloak. And I'm not putting any judgment out there for any of us that have gone that route and experienced that. But I want to point out how powerful it is to be able to either take that cloak off or even to start that way, like your father did, of there's only one person that's going to tell me when I'm going to die. That's super powerful. So just as far as the mindset goes, he's still, like you said, he still did his treatments. He still paid attention to his health, but he didn't let it overrun his life. And I think that's really powerful. So thank you for sharing that.
yeah. Well, and I just want to add to that. I can't even imagine because I've never been in someone else's shoes like that. But from my perspective as a daughter, I knew my dad had lupus, but it never seemed to get him down. We were never fearful of him dying. We weren't fearful of it. We weren't fearful. It was a shock when he did because he just didn't let it affect us. And I guess that's the reason I'm here too talking to you is because I want to show you that like he was a man that embraced it and just did not let it get him down. And I think that could be an example that, yes, it's this bad thing, but no. And I would understand why someone would get into that state where, oh, I've got this and oh, should I? And whereas I just wanted to share my dad's story because he did not do that. He just carried on and powered through and muscled through and said, I am living my life to the fullest. And yeah, that's why I'm here.
Yeah, that's super powerful. And again, everybody's experience is different. Sometimes the powering through mentality is what gets us there in the first place, gets us to that diagnosis, triggers it. There are lots of subtleties here, but I think overall, just having that mindset of, or perhaps, I don't know if he was religious, but perhaps that one other person that could tell him when his time was up was God. I'm just making assumptions. I don't know that.
That's truth.
Okay, being that's the case, giving that up to a higher power, recognizing that he can still live his life regardless, maybe depending on where the symptoms are at, life might need to be altered a bit, but it's still his life and it's still in God's hands. And I think that's again, just such a powerful place to come from.
Absolutely. That just gave me goosebumps because that's where it's at for us. So, yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely. Yeah.
So I want to get more into your story beyond this as well, but I can see that you're experiencing from your family from a young age this powerhouse kind of working mentality of we're going to get shit done. We're going to do this, like a really forward moving mentality. And you have been a farmer for pretty much most of your life, if not all of it. And you definitely have some really great insights that I want to share with our listeners. Could you give us like a brief overview of how you became a farmer and to where you are now? And then we'll get into all the nuances as we go.
First, I want to ask you, do you know what my middle name is?
I think it's Michelle.
No, it's Tenacious.
Oh, it's Tenacious.
No, it's not.
My middle name is it Michelle on paper? And where I'm
yeah,
making that up. Okay.
my name is
So I'm not
Dawn
Holly.
Michelle.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
Holly Michelle, that's why.
Oh, fun. No, I just make that joke that my
Tenacious.
middle name is Tenacious
Oh,
because
I
I'm a
love it.
go-getter, and I got that from my dad, and so I couldn't be more proud of that. I'm a second-generation farmer. My parents started a greenhouse by Airdrie, Alberta, Canada, and they grew long English cucumbers and sold them to the warehouse and did a great job of it. And then about 20 years ago, my parents sold their greenhouse. Me and my ex-husband built ours, and we were growing food for people. And through that journey, I ended up picking more and more of the business pieces up, and my ex-husband pulled back a bit, and we won't get into that. But yeah, I ended up buying him out of the farm, and I grew a 36,000 square foot of greenhouse, so cucumbers, tomatoes, and peppers. And then I did 15 acres of garden. And I brought it all to farmers markets, and I direct sold the majority of my produce directly to the customer and directly to the people. And the part I miss the most about my farm, because I just sold, in January, which has been really hard, is the relationship with my customers and the relationship with the people, because that's where it's at with our food. So
And
that's
you were
my brief.
very yeah, and you were very hands-on with your customers. You were not behind the scenes at all. You were the face.
Absolutely. I went to farmers markets 6 or sometimes 7 days a week through the summer. Yeah, talking to people and, "Hey, would you like to try my vegetables? Hi, have you heard of my farm? Hi, can I tell you about my farm?" One of my lines I used at a farmers market was, "Would you like to feel my peppers? They're very firm." And people would laugh, and I would get real straight faced and I'd say, "Why are you laughing? We're talking about peppers." It's funny. I've got a personality, I can tell you that.
I love it, and that's one of the things that drew me to you and got you on this podcast, of course. I don't know if you know that, I have a background in the restaurant industry, and I still am working with, the chef that I've worked with closely for years, and she had her restaurant, location. We had it for about 8 years. I was there almost the entire 8 years. She was a true farm still is a true farm to table chef, which means that she actually had relationships with the local farmers here in San Diego and bought directly from them. There was no food trucks delivering boxes of produce to her. The farmers would literally deliver to the restaurant themselves, or she would meet them at their farm. And so I come from that background of really respecting the local farmers, and so I wanted to share that because we know that it's a lot of hard work, but dive into that just a little bit more of why it's so important to support your local farmers and the local industry. You sound like you had a pretty big operation going on, but it's still considered a small farm, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was big. I did a big dollar number in the year, but in the greenhouse industry, I was considered really small. And so that's why I pulled out of the wholesale market, right? Selling direct to a warehouse. I love to hear that your friend's restaurant was supporting local farmers and actually shaking the hands of the people that grew and raised the food, because that is so important. I've seen it too many times here in Canada, and I don't know if you have that down in California, but where people are at a farmer's market, quote unquote, and they say farm raised or they say farm direct or they say farm grown, but it's actually not. It's not truthful. It's a buzzword. And so here in Alberta, we've got people who buy and sell produce and for cheaper than what you can, like than what I as the farmer could grow and sell it for. And so the lies in farm direct and the lies in local has been really, it's a lipstick on a pig is what it really is. And so that's the thing, is when you want local and when you want farm direct, make sure you do your research and make sure that's exactly what you're getting. Back to the little restaurant thing, I am, or I was, I don't know, you can't take the farmer out of me, but I was a farmer. And when I went to a restaurant and they said farm greens or local farm eggs, I was the person that said, "Can you tell me the farmer's name, please? And where was this grown?" And sometimes they would be like, and I'd be like, "This is not truthful. This is false advertising." And so I think local has become a buzzword rather than the true farm direct. And so I love to hear that you shook the hands of the farmers and you knew your farmers intimately and purchased from them. Yeah, so
Uh,
important.
Really quick, Holly B here. I just wanted to interrupt the podcast to ask you for a quick favor. Can you take just a moment to like and subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you are listening in on? It makes a world of a difference in the reach of this podcast. It takes like literally under 10 seconds. So go do that right now. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And now back to the episode. I just to add to the lies, there's a the farm to table, because I know this more from the restaurant standpoint rather than the farming standpoint. The farm to table tagline is really trendy, draws people in, right? But I know from being a true farm to table restaurant, from working there, that there are many that use that term that it's a complete lie. And in that, maybe, yes, the produce that they use was grown at a farm and now it is on a table. But it implies that you're working with the local farmers and that you bought directly from them and it's local produce that you're being served. But it absolutely isn't. But we actually had a restaurant here that I don't even, well, I don't think I'm big enough to get in trouble for outing them, but the name of the restaurant was Farmer's Table, still is. And at the time, they actually had the names of local farms on painted onto their tables to imply. But we know for a fact, because we're in the industry, that they were not purchasing from those farms.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So asking questions. I have also been to restaurants though where they say farm to table and they will actually list out the farms where they got their different produce and things from, like we did. Asking questions, I think, is super important because it gets the businesses to actually start thinking in that direction too.
I couldn't agree with you more. And you know what? Out away. I've been doing it here in Alberta and I've been banned from some pages and I'm not a quiet woman. If you're lying and you're saying farm direct and you're buying it from a warehouse, the same produce that you can buy in any grocery store, like liar pants on fire, that is not okay. There are still things that are okay and not okay. And lying in my books is not okay. And back to the question of like, how does that affect the farmer? Well, I can tell you this, in the farming and agriculture industry, farmers have had to get bigger. The margins are so tight in farming that you either have to niche down like I did and sell at farmers markets, but even that wasn't working because I was competing against people that were lying. And then, or you have to get bigger, bigger, bigger. And so that's where we've seen our agriculture industry going. And I'm pro farmer. I am not against the bigger farmer that had to do what he had to do to make his farm work. Is it ideal? No. Without farmers, we don't have food. It says it right on my hat. No farmers, no food. And so that's the thing. To keep our small farms alive, we need to purchase directly from them. We need to know them. We need to shake their hands and go get your beef. And the more we as consumers can vote with our dollars and buy directly from the farmer, the more farming and our food system will change. And we, the people and the consumers, have the power to do that. We don't have to follow into this big grocery system that we've been trained and taught to go into. And if you go down a grocery store, into a grocery store, the middle aisles of a grocery store isn't food, it's garbage, cardboard, it's filler, it's not healthy, it's not nutrient dense, it's dead. And that's where we can change things. We can go to your local farmer, buy your local food. And again, like you've got lupus. So I'm curious, can I ask you a question?
Of
How
course.
does your food affect your lupus, really?
Oh boy, that's a long answer. It can be a long answer. It directly affects it. 100%. I mean, and I'm still learning the nuances for myself because things change over time. But yeah, I've had to cut out so much crap from my diet, and most of that being processed foods, like you're saying. Seed oils is another one. Gluten is a huge one. Sugar, things like that. Dairy can be bad for some people. I don't find that to affect me, but I've also, in cutting out all the crap, I've been able to do more dairy. I've been able to do more other things. Interestingly enough, I have gone more animal based and protein based all the way to carnivore at one point. I'm adding more vegetables and fruits in now, and I seem to be okay with that. But for a time, I even had to cut down on that. So there's like a whole nuance. And, a lot of people with lupus are told and believe and find it to be true for themselves that they need to cut out more of the meat and do more of the produce. To me, it's all about whole foods. Again, that's all of that supports local farmers, or I should say, supports agriculture and farming, because you're, again, like you said, you're cutting out the whole middle of the grocery store. And all that stuff is not for health, it's for pleasure.
No, and I guess I could speak to wheat. Wheat right off of a farmer's field. If you were to grind that grain up, it's actually probably better for you. Like that flour would be really good. But by the time that grain leaves the farmer, goes to a shipping, gets shipped out, probably even out of Canada, turned into what they call flour and shipped back, it's lost so much. Like it started off as food, but it didn't end up as food, right? Like that's the issue, is where it starts from the farmer's field is not where it ends up. That's the crazy part of our food system. It's gotten so big. And I've actually called that out for about 10 years, that in the name of health and safety or bureaucracy or whatever you want to call it, we're going to get our food system dictated to us, and we the people need to stop that. So yeah. Yeah.
Can you speak more to that? I know you're coming obviously from Canadian standpoint. I don't know how everything translates down here in the US, but I believe you've been speaking to a bill that's going through or trying to go through your government in regards to agriculture. And talk to me about red tape. Talk to me about all that stuff, because people don't know. People just don't know.
Red tape kills bureaucracy. Now, I've got lots of left-wing friends, so don't get me wrong. I love talking to all people. I love all people. I think we should all have the freedom to choose what we want to believe and how we want to live our lives and what we want to eat and what do we want to put in our bodies. But in Canada right now, we've got a bill getting pushed through under a bigger agenda saying that if there's a pandemic or if there's something crazy going down, we have the right to come into farms and shut them down or make changes or get into their business. And that's not going to work in agriculture. Like, I don't love that our big farms are getting bigger. They have to. So I support all farmers. But like, then you get so big that you are pushed into rules and regulations and bureaucracy, and even my bureaucracy on my small farm. That's why I pulled out of grocery stores, is I needed to have Canada Gap certification, which was a $7,000 touch to my farm, to sell $20,000 worth of produce just to two local grocery stores. And I'm like, no, this is crazy. This is bureaucracy. This is not helping the small farmer and the local farmer. Like, it's just red tape and bureaucracy. And so sometimes when you have bureaucrats making rules and regulations, the ideology can sound good, but the practicality doesn't line up. And really, we need to be talking to farmers about what they need, and we need to be talking to consumers about what they want to eat. And we need to bridge those gaps and have more of those types of conversations and work together as a team, rather than just, I know how to run my farm, or I know how to run your farm better than you do. And so I don't know what it's like in the States. I watch all kinds of little videos and stuff like that. And I think you've got lots of red tape down there too about this and that and food. And yeah, it's right across North America, I think, is the bureaucracy. And so,
Yeah. I like having these conversations because people that aren't around this industry at all, I just don't think that they're necessarily aware of it. So I like to bring this to people's attention, that it's more than just going to the grocery store and buying your strawberries or your tomatoes. Like, there's so much more to it. And when you're looking at pricing, like, which am I going to buy, organic or am I going to buy the standard? Or like you said, we vote with our dollar. Some people maybe can't afford to go shop at the farmers markets all the time. So I get it. I guess I don't know where my question is going, but can you speak to like those choices from the people's financial perspective when they're shopping?
Yes, I absolutely can. So on my farm, my produce, if it got to be a week old, it was dead to me. It was grocery store standards, not my standards, not farmers market standards. So if you're buying direct from a farmer, that produce should be really fresh. See, when produce leaves a big farm or big agricultural business, it goes from the farm to a packing house to a warehouse, warehouse to a grocery store. It either rots or sells on the shelf because they don't throw it out. So that's why you get your produce home and it's your cucumber is a limp noodle or a mush the next day is because that cucumber is old. It's old produce in that big system. And can you imagine all the nutrients that you've lost in that process, of it not being fresh? So on my farm, if it was a week old, it was grocery store standard, not my standard. And I would always tell my customer, and this is where the relationship comes in. I would always say to my customer, I will take the risk on this produce. If this goes bad within a week, it's not your problem. You eat what you can, you compost the rest. I will replace it up, no questions asked. And that's how I ran my farm. If someone came to me and they said, "Oh, I just want to tell you, I've never had this before. My tomatoes went bad," I'd say, "Here you go. Here's another bag," because it was relational. And so produce that you buy, yes, it might be a little bit more money, but you're not throwing it out because it went bad in your fridge the next day. So it's about the relationship and knowing your farmer too. Like I wasn't an organic farmer. I grew without pesticide unless certified organic product was used. And so with organic produce, and I'm not bashing organic produce, I think it's really important. I think less pesticide, herbicide, fungicide. Well, herbicide would kill all the vegetables anyway, but I think that's the way to go. But I understand because I understand agriculture, I understand why a farmer needs to do that because his margins are so low selling to the warehouse. So he has to get the most out of it. Whereas at a farmer's market, you can yeah, I just grew the way the customer wanted, and I gave them what they needed, and I was very honest about what I did with my crops, which is why I built the farm I did. And so, yeah, you get the truth, you get the quality, you get the longevity, and yes, it might be a dollar more, but in the long run, you're actually eating that dollar and getting nutrients out of that dollar rather than either not getting the nutrients or throwing it out because it went bad.
And then can we also talk about the carbon footprint between getting your produce from a farmer's market versus everything it took to get those tomatoes on your table at the grocery store from the grocery store?
Yeah. So okay. So I'm going to speak to that from a Canadian perspective, actually. So you have more vegetable farmers down in the States, and we don't have like, I'm looking outside right now. Everything's dead. It's cold. We don't have snow on the ground at this moment, but like we had frost 2 months ago, right? So we're not growing enough in Canada. So we're importing it from other places. And so, I really think that if we want to help our carbon footprint, if you say it, like if you want to, it's buying local and eating seasonally. And I think eating seasonally too, like for us right now up in Canada, we should be focused on eating our meats. I'm pro beef. And we should be eating our squashes and our potatoes and our beets and our carrots and our storage type crops at this moment and saving our salads more for the summertime, right? And so I'm not sure what it would be like down in California because I don't live there, but like it's that seasonal eating and that would actually solve our global hunger issues too, right? If we can just eat what we can grow. And so does that answer your question or
Yeah. And I'm glad that you brought up the seasonal eating. I wasn't sure where you stood on that because I didn't know exactly what produce you grew and what times of year you grew it. But I completely agree with the seasonal eating aspect of it. Growing, I always say, I'm down here in Southern California. We can grow produce all year long. It's a lot different here versus, I don't know, up where you are or somebody up in the northern states where it's winter for a large portion of the year, or at least it seems like it from a San Diego perspective, where you can't just, you shouldn't be eating lettuce necessarily, like butterleaf lettuce in the middle of winter. That doesn't make sense. I mean, it wouldn't naturally be growing, is what I'm trying
it's
to say, right?
yeah, you're correct. So it's not naturally growing. Like I had a greenhouse and I had a $12,000 natural gas bill along with that greenhouse to heat it, right? And so we do have greenhouses here in Canada that have grow lights that are growing cucumbers, tomatoes, and peppers and lettuce right through the winter. Um, Yeah, it's not natural, but we have it. And I don't know, should you eat salad in the winter? Should you not eat salad? I love salad, so I'm going to eat salad myself 365 days a year. But again, from your perspective, learn your body and know what your body needs and what your body is saying to you and what you're putting into it. So
Yeah.
I can eat a salad 365 days a year. Is it the healthiest? I don't know. Do I love it? Yes. So will I do it? Yes. There's worse things I could do to my body than eat a salad. So
That I definitely agree with.
yeah.
And again, that that depends on, of course, where you're at with your health journey. Other people would not be able to tolerate that at all, let alone in the winters. Hey, I just wanted to jump in here and interrupt the program for just a hot minute. You know that I'm so passionate about this podcast, but what I'm also really passionate about is helping women with lupus minimize their symptoms, boost their energy so that they can indulge in life again. So if you are a woman who is struggling with lupus, who is sick and tired of being sick and tired, who's struggling to manage your flares, if you're finding that your lupus symptoms are just really getting in the way of you being able to live your life the way you want to, I feel you. I've been there myself and I felt the same way. And what I've found is that there are a certain set of health fundamentals that once applied, will support you in your foundational health. They will support you in building and maintaining that energy, minimizing flares, and allowing you to, again, indulge in life and follow your passions. So, if that is something that you are interested in creating for yourself, let's jump on a call together. I will walk you through the process that I use with my clients to get them from sick and tired to strong foundation of health by implementing my HealthBridge protocol. If this is something you're interested in chatting more about, I would love to talk to you. Apply for a free clarity call with me, and I look forward to getting to know you soon. And now back to the episode. So again, this conversation could go on a whole nother tangent and be very nuanced in that, but I love having some of this perspective put out there. I want to ask you about raw milk
Yeah.
because I think you've talked
So
about that. So tell us about raw milk, and is it as dangerous as we're told it is?
no, that's a false claim. Now, if you okay, so if you it's all depends on the person too, right? I grew up on raw dairy. In Canada, dairy is illegal, more illegal than drugs to sell in Canada unless you are through the certain system. And I don't fault dairy farmers. I love all farmers. But yeah, I used to, when I was growing up in the 80s, we went to the local dairy farm. We filled up our jars. We brought it home. That's what we drank. And I I don't know a lot about raw dairy, but I do believe that when we pasteurize dairy, we are losing some of the good bacteria as well as the potential bad bacteria that's in there from not cleaning your equipment properly, not sterilizing your jars, or not handling the milk properly. There can be bad bacteria. No different than if you bought a steak from the store and you didn't put it in the fridge and then you try and eat it, you might get sick. Use some brain power here, right? And so raw dairy, and I think when you have those good bacteria in your tummy, in your guts, in your system, that helps with your immune system. Because am I wrong? Your immune system starts in your guts and in your
Yep.
tummy?
Yep.
Yeah. So here's a little story. So it's illegal, but I had my hands on some raw dairy and I fed it to my oldest daughter, and she was not able to do store-bought dairy. It was bugging her tummy. It was hard on her system. It wasn't making her feel good. And we got the raw dairy and boom, she can have dairy again. So I think as a human being, we're missing that natural part of what milk can give us in our gut system. And so I think in the States it's state by state as to whether you can sell raw dairy or not. Is that correct?
As far as I know, yeah. Like
So
here in
California.
California, we can get raw dairy. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. So
amazing.
I do when
Yeah.
I do get that when I can. We actually have it at some of the the more natural local grocery stores as opposed to the big box stores. You can actually get some raw dairy, which is pretty amazing. But what I love, you said, let's just use a little bit of our common sense when it comes to these things. Like you're talking about sterilization and just proper handling. The story just came out recently about Costco having to dump how much of their freaking grass-fed butter because it didn't say contains milk on the label. We have lost common sense.
Right across the board in society. Like, how stupid is that? Butter is whole, real, good, wholesome food. It's food. It's great nutritional value. Like, we've been conditioned that it's not okay, but that's bullshit. Sorry, I like that word, but crazy is crazy. And so we're going to throw out 80,000 pounds of butter just because it doesn't say contains milk. Use your brain. And that's part of it. Like, at what point in society are we bureaucrating and bureaucratizing? I don't even know if that's a word, but like mandating just stupidity. Like, it's just so dumb. And it's in the name of, oh, I might not want a lawsuit or I might get, in trouble or whatever. And that's dumb. Like, we need to start pulling the bureaucracy and the stupidity out of some of this stuff and let nature take its course. I don't know. That sounds harsh, but come on, society. Like, we've been given brains to think. Let's think and let's use them. And
Yeah. And so on that note, you are now coaching people on growing their own produce sustainably at their home. I think no matter what size area you have to grow in, right? So dive into that a little bit. Tell us more about your program. And then if you could give us some tips of like, okay, I'm new to this. Actually, start with why it's important to learn how to grow some of your own produce. And then maybe where people should start if they're new to it.
yes. Okay, so since selling my farm, my arm has been ripped off. My farm was plan A. That's all I've ever wanted. So having to sell my farm, I lost 100 grand on my farm last year and I just didn't make financial sense to keep going. So I sold it. I had to, sucked, carry on. So my plan B, and I just feel like we were talking about the Lord earlier. I figure there's something bigger with me and probably my tongue. I'm not a quiet woman. And so I just feel led to, if you give a man a fish, he eats for a day. If you teach a man to fish, he eats for a lifetime. So let's apply that to gardening. Let's apply that to chickens. Let's apply that to our food system, beef, whatever. And so I'm starting off with vegetables because that's where I have the most experience. And so I'm teaching people how to grow food in the space that they have. So if you have a small balcony in a condo someplace, you can actually grow a lot of food. Now you have to be smart in what you plant and you have to know what to feed it and how to take care of it and things like that. But that's what I'm teaching people is how to look after their garden space. So a balcony right up to 20 acres of garden, I can help you because I've got the experience and I can save you time and I can save you money and I can tell you what to plant. And that's my coaching program is we will garden together as a team. I'm not right in your home, but through a Zoom call or through different things I've got set up, like we will garden together and we will get you food. And I think the reason that is so important, especially now with the world's a crazy place right now. And one of my biggest fears moving off my farm was, what am I going to feed my children if the grocery store shuts down? Most grocery stores, they've only got so much food for so many people for so many days. And so if you can't have the grocery store food or they shut down whatever or bureaucracy or who knows, this is doomsday prepping and I hope I'm wrong, but if that ever happened, what am I going to feed my children? Well, I've got a little greenhouse, I've got some chickens, I've got a garden, I'm self-sufficient, and then in doing that, I can share my food with others, right? So I was in Kelowna here a couple weeks ago and there was a zucchini sitting on an electrical box, and when we walked back through the second time, the zucchini was gone. And I thought that is our food system. If I have too many tomatoes, I can share them with you. And if you have too much basil, you can share it with me. And we both have pasta sauce. And so if we get back to the roots of our food and growing our own and doing what we can and sharing with others and building community, that's where our food system needs to go back to instead of this massive, crazy system that we've got with grocery stores and wholesalers and trucks and money driven, whatever. Yeah. Anyways, so that's what I'm doing now is I'm teaching people how to grow food.
I love it. And it brings it back to community and how much healing on all levels happens when we get back to community, right? Like mental healing, spiritual healing, physical healing. We're nourishing in multiple ways when you connect with the community. And so I think I walk around my neighborhood when I'm walking my dog, and a lot of people have like citrus trees or zucchini or whatever growing. And sometimes I will see a basket like free, take one, take a few. And I love that.
That's where it's at. So I actually recorded a podcast with some guests yesterday, and we were talking about that same issue. And the woman that I was talking to, she actually welled up with tears and started to cry because she said she had just butchered some pigs the day before or on the weekend or whatever. And she welled up with tears because they butchered the pigs together as a bunch of a collective of families. They valued the pigs. They did the work. They had conversation. They did it as a team. And then after that, they sat down at a table and they ate a meal together. No phones, no electronics. And it was just a full circle moment because here they did the job. Then they went to sit at a table across from one another, breaking bread and eating. They knew where everything on the plate was from. And it was just a closed loop of a system. And it's not just a food system, but it's spiritual and social. And it just brings all of those things that we need for our well-being. That's why my dad could be so tenacious and so whatever, is because community and just we're not just physical health. We're beings that have so much more to us, and all of those pieces are so important.
I agree with you so much. And again, just to bring that back to the lupus conversation and physical health and just sustainability of health, like it comes back to whole foods being the most nourishing thing that you can eat. And to add to that nourishment, getting things from your community. And when you're describing sitting around that table, everybody did the butchering together, everybody did the cooking together, everybody brought something literally to the table together. It comes across as a more European, I think, sense of community that we have lost here. I don't know if it's because North America is just so big and spread out and all these other things have come into play. But I think getting back to that is so nourishing to the soul, so nourishing to the body, so nourishing to the spirit, that's where true healing can take place. So thank you so much for sharing all of this.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I could talk farmers and vegetables and food all day long. I love it. Yeah.
Well,
And
Dawn,
the lupus piece hit my heart. That's why I've been drawn to you right from the first time I saw you in our coaching program was the lupus piece. So yeah, I care. So
awesome. Well, it's obvious that you care in everything that you do and say. And so I'd love for everybody to follow you. Where can they find you?
Dawn's dirt. So it's not just dirt and soil and gardening. It's dirt on everything. As you can tell, I'm not a quiet woman. So I talk about all kinds of crazy things. And so Dawn's dirt on Instagram, Facebook. And I just launched my podcast the other day. So yeah, you can find me on Spotify, Rumble. I'm not great with technology. Apple Podcasts and YouTube. Yeah, that's where you can find me. Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah.
Well, Dawn, thank you so much. Hopefully we'll have plenty more future conversations and I'll have you on again to continue this conversation in the future.
I love it. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Dawn. Dawn is so fun to talk with. I could have talked to her for hours and we'll probably have her on future episodes to talk more in detail about growing your own food, about bigger implications of farming and things like that. There's so many rabbit holes we could go down. But I just want to reiterate what we were talking about there at the end with the healing aspect of community and how farming and growing your own produce can actually be so much more sustainable and healthy on so many levels when it comes to that community aspect of breaking bread and how healing that is on so many levels. Again, it's not just healing on a community heartfelt aspect of getting together and breaking bread. It's healing because it's nourishing you on those multiple levels. We didn't really even talk about this in the podcast, but as a lupus warrior, as somebody who deals with lots of health issues that are or can be exacerbated by food choices and consumption choices, we can get scared of food and we can shy away from those community gatherings where it's surrounded by food, potlucks, family get togethers, going out to dinner with friends. And we can tend to shy away from that community aspect of breaking bread because we're fearful of the food. I want to recognize the importance in those community gatherings, especially around food, and stress that there are ways that we can make that work for us, whether or not the food being served is healthy for us, whether that gathering is surrounded around local farm produce, homemade foods, things that are truly nourishing on a physical level. We can still bring our own food to the party, right? We can still be nourished in the community aspect, even if we don't partake in many of the foods that are being served. You can find ways to bring your own food to make sure you have that something nourishing or to eat a little bit before you get there so you're not starving and you're not forced with making decisions on what you consume that aren't optimal because that community aspect is so important to nourish us, right, on those other levels. And so I just want to put that out there as an aside to this conversation of if you are somebody that has had to shy away from those gatherings, let's start to rethink and see if we can find ways of dipping our toes back in. I mean, COVID and all the lockdowns and everything got us used to this isolating of ourselves, which was so unhealthy on so many levels. So if you haven't already, let's get back into finding ways to feel comfortable and confident in those community situations where we can get that healing on different levels. And if we can bring nourishing food to that table as well to break bread with, that much better. So, on that note, thank you so much for listening. I would love to hear your experiences of breaking bread and how you find that it heals you as well. So please chime in to both me and Dawn. Follow Dawn's Dirt on all the platforms that she is on. Listen to her podcast as well. She has so much more to say than we talked about on our episode. So make sure you're following along with that. And when you're ready to take on a different aspect of healing, a different aspect of living in ways that will help support you and nourish you through your lupus journey, please reach out. What do you have to lose, truly? It's just a conversation, right? It's just some added information that you can decide to run with or not. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of the HealthBridge podcast.